The Blood Queen rises. We're summoning horses from the ether that are going to rock down onto the world, and we're also bringing death upon those that brought death upon us. We'll take a quick look at the Death Knight hero talents here. Going to do all the quick looks on all the classes. We're not doing guides or anything like that, but I'm so enjoying War Within right now that I absolutely wanted to take a quick look at these. Let's take a look at the hero talent system. Quick disclaimer, the hero talents are designed with two things in mind. One, obviously we have the talent revamp in Dragonflight, which is on the basis of people just really like having a talent points to spend every time they level. That's a fact. That's what they put back in, even if the talent isn't exciting. You will find that sort of out of the 10 hero talents you're going to get, 8 of them are just passive upgrades, and in some cases all 10 of them are just passive damage upgrades in some way, shape or form. And really the aim of the hero talents is flavor. That's what they are. They're not going to be... I think some people predicted, including me a little bit, that they were essentially just creating new classes on top of the other, like subclasses essentially. That's not really the case. What you're getting is some sort of flavor enhancement to your playstyle. Obviously, if you're a min-maxer, there will be a Abyss and a Worst. You get a choice of 2, depending on what you are. So that's really the theme. They're flavor rather than just subclasses. As always, there is a lot of them. Some are better than others. That's the nature of the beast. Over the course of the alpha, these are definitely going to change. Let's talk about the Blood DK ones. Let's start with the obvious one that people are absolutely losing their minds on, which is Riders of the Apocalypse. They are losing their nuts over this. People, be careful, because this is, in terms of the general community, the one that people are just like, oh, heart blizzard. Big heart. What is Riders of the Apocalypse? The essential flavor of this is, as you spend runes, you will summon the 4 horsemen. You will summon them randomly. They have a chance to spawn whenever you spend runes. They will just appear through a mini death gate, and they will contribute some sort of effect to the fight. That might be freezing targets, and then those frozen targets can be shattered when you do damage. It might drop death and decay. It might give you anti-magic shell. It'll do all kinds of things like that when they spawn. You cannot control who appears, so if Nazgrim appears, great. It is what it is. It's entirely random what comes up. However, if you are playing... whichever spec you have, one of your major cooldowns will summon them all. So for Unholy, for example, Army of the Dead will guarantee all 4 to spawn at once. Outside of using Army of the Dead, you can have multiple of the riders up at once. Looks fantastic. Visually, 10 out of 10. Love this one. Like, from a visual perspective, it's no wonder people love this thing. It's very cool to have this appear. Riders of the Apocalypse subclass, I'm going to call them subclasses for now, does also allow you to mount in combat. Yes, you can mount and fight in combat. Now, this is a little limited right now, is you can only mount and fight in combat, like actively be on your mount and fighting, on the Icarus Death Charger, the original Death Knight mount. Not even the other Death Chargers that you can get in the game, like Invincible, for example, work here. It's just the Icarus Death Charger for now. I would like to see this expanded at least to the other Death Chargers. Personally, I think the Icarus Death Charger kind of looks like trash. It looks like it's one meal away from starving to death, but that's okay. But you can also just get on your flying mount if you want to and just leave. You could totally do that. You could just get onto your dragon and just be like, peace, I'm out of here. You can mount anytime you want to while in combat and just go away. And you could do it and whenever the hell you feel like it. Super fun. It will also give you, your Death's Advance puts you on a horse and charges you across, very similar to a paladin. It gives you all that vibe. So mobility has definitely been addressed here. The criticism of this is entirely passive, and for me, who is a gameplay whore, I love interactive gameplay and twists on gameplay. This is my least favorite. Visually, my favorite. Practicality-wise, my least favorite. And the reason for that is I have no control over it. I can't do anything with it. It's with all the pets up, certainly while playing Unholy, you don't even know they're there half the time because they spawn and immediately go to the rear of the enemy in a pet position. And as soon as you've got a group of people doing stuff, you don't even know if they're there. Like, if you wanted to really min-max this, you would need a weak aura to know which horsemen are up at what time. And therefore, they're fire and forget. And I did, sorry to say, horseman lovers, I forgot they existed after the first, 2 minutes. Doing a dungeon, they do extraordinary burst damage, as Unholy tends to do. But yeah, practicality-wise, they're entirely passive. They do their thing. You can possibly min-max a little bit out of it, but yeah, it's just entirely passive. Let's move on to the one that I'm still undecided on. This is Deathbringer. So you're going to have access to Deathbringer as Blood or Frost. I should point out, of course, that Riders of the Apocalypse is Frost and Unholy. And the Deathbringer we're talking about now is Blood and Frost. I mainly played this as Frost, although I did do it as Blood. This one is tricky. So you do gain an extra button here. You do gain the extra button where you mark a target. First of all, the way this thing works is it will detonate regardless, either after a duration or if it hits 40 stacks of Shadow Frost damage. So it's not a case of you're trying to get it to 40 stacks as quickly as possible. This is something I had to drop because typically in World of Warcraft, when you apply something that gains stacks, you want to stack it up as fast as possible. That's not the case with this one. It will, as long as it is on the target, it will go off regardless if the target's alive for 12 seconds. I do wish that it would detonate regardless if the target died. It doesn't, at least right now. So if the target dies at like 11 seconds... then it's just, you know, it's gone. And if you picked a target in a group of mobs and it's just the wrong one, then you lose the effect of it. This has multiple things. One, it detonates, does huge amounts of damage. But it will then modify your next, certainly if you're like playing Frost, or it'll modify one of your abilities. So for Frost, it's Obliterate into an ability called Exterminate. And Exterminate has a chance to reapply the mark onto a new target. So it generally has quite a long cooldown. It's like a minute cooldown. But with some of the talent choices in the hero talents, you can change that to like 30 seconds. Or you can buff the chance of having it be reapplied by Exterminate and give yourself 2 Exterminates every time it expires. Exterminate does 2 scythes. The first scythe can reapply mark. The second scythe does a lot of damage. And on top of this, once it detonates, a little orb, it says very edgy, it will rip the soul out of the target. But basically a little orb will spin around and do 20% of the damage that the detonate did of the mark onto everything it passes through. This is kind of where the real huge damage comes from this thing. This scales ridiculously. If you have a lot of enemies and this mark goes off and hits very hard and the orb comes out and just starts smashing through all these enemies, you will do more damage than anybody else in the game. It's ridiculous, but it does rely on more enemies, more better.
We just gank him overall? Nah. He's so far away from my overall. There's just no shot. What did he just do with this boss, though? Like, that was just rude.
As simple as that. Some of the giant pulls we did in dungeons, the orb itself was just the massive DPS. And certainly if you get the mark to reapply on your Exterminate, then you can do this twice and you just start getting horrendous amounts of DPS out of it. But sometimes you don't. Sometimes you don't. There is some advantages. If you put it on a target on low health, it will detonate faster, meaning that you could kind of just, it's almost like a mini execute at that point. Which then led me to like, okay, do I basically wait to a low health target and then apply it so it goes off quicker and have all these things? Like sometimes if you put it on early, the target dies and you miss out on it. But if you hold back a little bit and put it on when it's already low health, then it detonates faster. There is some manipulative gameplay to go along with this, which makes it kind of fun. It's just the results can vary, as I've just explained. Sometimes it does a lot of damage, sometimes it doesn't. Hard to say. Generally speaking, it's an extra button in your rotation, but this is something you can mess with and get some big results out of. Initially, I didn't like this one too much because it was somewhat fire and forget, and sometimes it did big damage, sometimes it didn't. But the more you played with it, and the more you started to understand its quirks, you started to get some really nice results out of it. So I'm more in favor of this one, certainly compared to Rise of the Apocalypse, as how it pays off. It's not super noob friendly, but it's not a total pain in the ass either to deal with. So Deathbringer, visually, pretty good. It's the Exterminate effect that's very good. The 2 scythes going off. It's basically Argus's scythe animation that they've used here, and it's got a nice sound effect that goes with it. So visually, it's decent. It's pretty good. Gameplay-wise, there's a lot of room with this one to get something really good out of it. And I think this is one that people can mess with, although it can feel like a little bit of a noob trap sometimes. So, like this one a lot. Let's move on to Sandlane. Sandlane is my favorite. This one I love. I adore Sandlane. Ah, the blood will flow, my friends. Sandlane. What's the deal with Sand Lane? Sand Lane converts during one of your major cooldowns. This is open to Blood or Unholy to change your stuff into Vampiric Strike. And Vampiric Strike will then buff the hell out of your character, giving you a massive haste bonus once you start using one of your... It will convert one of your abilities, right? So it will change like Scourge Strike into Vampiric Strike or Heart Strike into Vampiric Strike. And this will then give you a massive haste buff. So much haste, in fact, that regularly playing the alpha, which it takes place on the west coast of the US, the game couldn't keep up with my button presses. Literally, I was running into like the pressing buttons that were just kind of spinning and not activating because the latency just couldn't keep up with what the hell I was doing, which will lead to some weird gameplay, at least during the alpha, but on live, this is not going to be an issue. But basically, you get this huge haste buff on demand exactly when you need it, and it makes the gameplay so fun, which is what I love. It's very simple. You also have a random chance to activate it sometimes, but it's really the control. So like for Blood, using your Vampiric Blood, which you will use very, very regularly when playing a Blood Death Knight, gives you this. So you get, not only are you really sturdy, you've got Vampiric Blood up, but you've also got this massive haste buff, which speeds up the entire gameplay. And again, Blizzard has done a really good job over the recent years of Death Knights that rely quite a bit on haste to feel good, which is namely Unholy and Blood, to find a way of working that into the early class design. Instead of how it used to be, sort of Wrath of the Lich King era into Cataclysm, is that they felt too slow and diabolically bad until late game when stats gave you the haste to make it feel good. That doesn't happen here. With Sand Lane, it feels solid, it's reliable, it's on demand, it's exactly when you would want it. Huge fan of Sand Lane. Really enjoyed this one and its interactions. More Leech is coming because obviously you're playing a blood-focused spec. Very much enjoyed this, and I also enjoyed that it didn't push you really into certain talent setups, which some of the hero talents do, but we'll get there. So that's my current thoughts on them. Like some of them, I think people are gonna, if you're not a min-maxer, which I know many people do follow the upper trends, then there's a lot of choice here and a lot of flavor, which is what the hero talent's down to do. I'll come back as they update these over the alpha with any changes that they make and any changes in my opinion. Thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned for more alpha content as it's coming. Bye, guys.